Hello, all. We want to talk about house affordability calculator. At some point, we imagine we want to buy a house, and we want to know if we are going to be approved for a loan and how much the bank is going to approve us. Of course, they will look at our income, they will look at our tax returns, they will look at our credit report to see how much money we owe on bank on for credit cards, credit card payments, let's say car loans, student loans. Therefore, they look at all of these. Therefore, we look at here, we click on, this is 100 points, calculator, and very easy. You click on house affordability calculator, and imagine that I want, of course, in my case, it is 100,000. We want you to use different rates. And 100,000 is, my annual income, for example. And I want to get a mortgage for 30 years. And the interest rates at the moment are 6.243. In fact, in real world, it is actually these days, if you want to buy a house, excuse me, it is 6.5 or something. It was a little bit higher a few days ago before the Federal Reserve, met and, they dropped the interest rates by half a percentage point. That means it was maybe at 7%. Now it is at 6.5%. Therefore, think about the, interest rates that you want to put and change it based on, it might be 6%. It might be lower if you use, mortgage that is not 30 years. It's for 15 years. It might be a little lower, and we will discuss why the mortgages that you pay off in 13 years, will have a lower interest rates, therefore, and then usually they want 20% down for whatever house I want to buy. Remember that this is not the amount I am borrowing. This is my salary here. I want to put 20%. We want to see how much I can borrow from the bank. And then, assuming that I have to pay in my area 1.5% property tax and insurance I have to pay, and then conventional loan. This is very interesting because when I saw here, the meaning of this 28, look at this 28 here. This 28, the meaning of it is that you imagine you don't owe anything, any credit card, any car loans, any student loans. Therefore, they will let you maybe put 36% of your salary. This 36% of your salary, goes, for example, you can 36% of your salary maybe goes for the, annually can go for, payment of your mortgage and other costs. And therefore, for now, we go with the conventional loan. And we will talk about what we mean by what it means. 28 is when you do not have, you have some loans for car loans or the others. If you don't have, it is 36. Therefore, this is called conventional. We will talk about it when we come to VA loans, and, we put this 10%. We will talk about it. But for now, let's calculate it and take a look at it. What it is telling me is that based on 2836, which is conventional loan, I can borrow with my $100,000 salary, I can borrow $354,000 of a loan. I can buy a house, which is $354,000. And out of that, this is the amount of the loan I can borrow from the bank. The bank would give me, and this is my 20% down payment that I said. Here it is. I can borrow 283. I can, this is the total price of the house, and this is my down payment, and this is my closing cost. And when I go for the settlement, I go for the, closing. I have to come up with 81,452. Out of that, it is my down payment and other costs that I have. Based on this, just my mortgage would be 1,743. When I pay this 1,743, it goes for this, goes for the money that I borrow. However, you have to know that I have other expenses. When you buy a house, this is the property tax. It is annually. Let's not forget, this money you are paying monthly, you are paying this annually. And then imagine, because it is a house, you don't have a condominium fee, and then you have an annual insurance for the property, and estimated annual maintenance cost, 1.5%, which includes utility, that is 5,000. Therefore, you better be able to come up with 22,776. Therefore, your mortgage to bank is only 1,753. Therefore, when the bank wants to give you money, this 283,000, they know that you are going to pay the bank this much, but at the same time, they know, they put that assumption that not only you have to pay this much to the bank, you do have other expenses. That's why they are hoping and they are assuming that you can come up with $2,776. Therefore, by doing so, you can afford, assuming you don't have $50,000 of credit cards, loan payment, credit card payments, I don't know, $700 of car payment. Those are huge payments. Therefore, that is, think about it, that is on a 36% rule. Now, if it becomes, we will talk about more about this, why it is saying. Therefore, you understood this part. Now, let's say you owe a lot of, credit card, you owe, let's say, $60,000 on credit cards. And then in that case, the bank would say, sorry, we cannot look at this conventional loan. We can assign only 10% of your annual salary. 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. You know that 10% is 10,000, 15% is 15,000. Let's say they say, because you owe so much money on your credit cards, we cannot look at it to give you a kind of this 36% of your salary is almost $36,000. Do you see that? When it says, do you know that this is around $3,000? 3,000 times 12 is 36. Do you see that? 36 means that they are giving you a lot of money, assuming you don't owe a lot of money for your credit cards. However, when you look at your credit score and see you owe a lot of student loans and you owe a lot of, a lot of credit cards, a lot of, payments for your car, they say that, oh, sorry, only 10% of your salary can go for the mortgage. Before it was 36, 28 or whatever. By doing so, they don't want to give you a lot of money. Let's see what happens then. When I click here, they come and say, sorry, we cannot allow you to buy a house for $350,000 because you owe so much. Just 10% of your salary is going to go. Therefore, they say, this is what the house you can buy with your salary of $100,000. And 20% of this will be, the down payment. Here, it is, it is more than, 25% is a kind of down payment, 20%. And then you have a closing cost. Therefore, you have to be able to come up with a cash of $29.90. They don't let you to buy expensive houses. Therefore, that way, your mortgage is, do you see here, is so low because they know now that you have a lot of other expenses. If they give you suddenly huge amount of loan, you won't be able to pay it, and your house will be foreclosed. Therefore, and then their taxes, and you see your monthly payment after all these expenses, because your expenses are low now, and that means that you pay only $991. If you multiply $991 every month, think about it just as a rough estimate, that is almost 10% of your salary. That means $100,000, almost 10% of it goes for the, therefore, the lower this number, that means they give you less money. But let's say they come here and look at VA, veterans, or some lucky people, because the government allows them, to get a lot of money to borrow 40%, for assuming that a person who is a VA person doesn't owe a lot of credit cards. Look at that. They let him borrow or her borrow. Look at that, 481. That doesn't mean if you are a veteran, you should go and borrow that money. But looks like the government is trying, the banks are trying to give VA loan to be generous. But that doesn't mean necessarily the interest rates that you are paying might be high. You won't be able to pay your, mortgage, and your house might go, therefore that is, you understand, the higher this number, which is here, 50% is that means 50% of your salary can go for the 50% of 100,000 is 50,000. That means you can borrow $50,000 of, annually you can pay $50,000 to, of course, that's before taxes, Therefore, when I click there and 50%, and I click, it will go over $500,000. Here you go 632. Therefore, you have to remember this is called debt to equity ratio. That number that we looked at here, do you see debt to income? Debt to income, which means that is a ratio that they calculate. Therefore, they usually, people get this conventional loan. And what it means, as I said, 36 is for someone who doesn't have any credit cards or something, 28, some credit cards. Therefore, what I want you to do, I am going to post this video and look at how I put these numbers here. Here it is. And I posted this on the discussion board. And I want you to go there and change the salary here. And then if you want, use conventional 28%, and then that was the amount of money I could borrow. It was right in here, right in here. And then I put other information. My 20% down is how much, and I said, you go ahead, and these are easy to do. It's a matter of understanding these calculators and these numbers and understanding the importance of not having a lot of debt. If you have a lot of debt, the banks don't let some of you might become a loan officer. If you become a loan officer, you have to know about these numbers. And if you want to buy a house, you have to be able to know that you can afford it or not. During 2008, for example, the banks didn't use these calculators. What they did, they didn't, do you remember we talked about 28%, 10%? They never looked at this number. They just gave money to everybody. The people who didn't have credit, came there, and I heard an interesting word. They called it, they gave a lot of money to ninjas. Ninjas means that no income, no job, no investment. Suddenly the person went to bank and he was or she was a ninja, and then was able suddenly to get $500,000 with no job, no income, no investment, and buy a house. And then the houses went bankrupt and the U.S. economy went down. Therefore, we want you to become familiar with this calculator. We want you to play with it because, as you know, these calculators are somewhat similar, but they give you some sense, because the banks sometimes are tricky. They give you money, sometimes they give you money, you buy it, and sometimes what the banks do? When they sell the mortgage to you, don't think that the bank is going to keep your mortgage, and then what they do, they are smart. They sell your mortgage to another organization, which is called, some of you have heard of, Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a big major organization in DC that buys these loans from the bank. Therefore, sometimes the banks, don't care. Suddenly they might give you a lot of money, but that doesn't mean that if the banks, it's very important to be very conservative. You don't want your house to go, to be foreclosed. Therefore, the more you know about these things, the better. It's always good to be in the safe side and not to take risk, and understand the concept of interest rates. Regarding the interest, you have to negotiate with a lot of banks, multiple banks, and see what they are, understand the policies, rules, regulations. Suppose you have to go and ask them, okay, is there any prepayment penalty, for example? Prepayment penalty is when you go to the bank and say, I have extra money and I want to pay as part of my loan. If they have a penalty, suddenly they might take some of your money and, say, why are you paying off your loan? Therefore, it is good to know about the terms, and it is good to know, the more you know about these calculators, the better it is. It is good for your math. It is good for your, because all of you, and as I said, it doesn't apply just to mortgage. The same calculator might be, can I afford the car? Therefore, we want you to complete, and these are easy, change these numbers based on what you see, and it doesn't need any Excel sheet. Just post this one. It's a matter of listening to this discussion, and just the assignment will take you 10-15 minutes, and then maybe this video takes 15 minutes. Total, you were spending 30 minutes, but at least you learn about the good calculator, and you will, know a lot about, borrowing and these rules, conventional loans, VA loans, and those issues.